Hello friends, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a major incident inside Russia that could have big consequences for both the war in Ukraine and global energy. On August 28th, Ukraine carried out a massive drone attack on the Kuibyshev oil refinery in Samara region. The strike caused multiple fires and forced the refinery to completely shut down. But why is this so significant? And how does it impact Russia's economy and its war effort? Let's break it all down, step by step. In the early hours of August 28, Ukraine launched at least 29 drones at two major Russian oil facilities, the Kuibyshev refinery in Samara Oblast and the Afipsky refinery in Krasnodar. At Kuibyshev, the drones hit several key parts of the plant, including two primary refining units, a hydrogen production unit, and pipelines connected to diesel tanks. As a result, 7 separate fires broke out across the site. The scale of the damage was so severe that the entire refinery had to be shut down. Official Russian statements told a very different story. Local authorities claimed that 21 drones were shot down and that the fires were quickly extinguished with minimal damage. But multiple independent sources, including Ukrainian officials, confirmed that operations at the refinery have stopped completely. This shows the gap between Russian propaganda and the reality on the ground. In fact, this is one of the biggest confirmed hits on Russia's domestic oil industry since the war began. The Kuibyshev refinery is not a small facility. It has the capacity to process over 7 million tons of oil every year. It produces petrol, diesel, fuel oil, and solvents, much of which is used not just for civilian purposes, but also for Russia's military logistics and aviation fuel supply. Taking such a refinery offline directly affects Russia's ability to power its tanks, aircraft, and supply chains. In a war where fuel is as important as ammunition, this strike is highly strategic. This is not an isolated attack. Over the past year, Ukraine has carried out dozens of drone strikes deep inside Russian territory, targeting refineries in Saratov, Volgograd, Ryazan, Sochi, and others. Altogether, around 17% of Russia's refining capacity, roughly 1.1 million barrels per day, has been disrupted at various points. For Ukraine, these strikes serve two purposes. They weaken Russia's war economy, and they also bring the war back into Russian territory, forcing Moscow to spend more on air defenses far from the front lines. The impact on the Russian economy is already visible. Wholesale fuel prices have surged. For example, the price of Euro 95 petrol has risen to over 82,000 rubles per ton, which is about a 55% increase since the beginning of the year. Retail fuel prices for ordinary Russians are also climbing, with some regions seeing nearly 10% increases year on year. To prevent shortages, Russia has even had to suspend some fuel exports so it can prioritize domestic supply. In short, Ukraine's drone strikes are hitting Russia in its pocket as well as on the battlefield. Why is this important in the bigger picture? Because wars are not only fought with tanks and soldiers, they're also fought with infrastructure. By targeting refineries, Ukraine is applying pressure where Russia is vulnerable. Without steady fuel supplies, the Russian military's ability to move troops, launch airstrikes, or supply the front lines gets harder. And economically, higher fuel prices mean more discontent among Russian citizens, which creates political pressure on the Kremlin itself. This refinery attack also shows how much warfare has changed. Small, relatively cheap drones are now capable of striking hundreds of kilometers inside enemy territory, damaging facilities worth billions of dollars. What we're seeing is the rise of long-range drone warfare, a form of asymmetric strategy that allows a smaller country like Ukraine to challenge a larger power like Russia in ways that traditional armies could not. To summarize, Ukraine's drone strike shut down the Kuibyshev oil refinery in Russia's Samara region, one of the largest such hits of the war. It's part of a broader campaign to weaken Russia's fuel supply, raise costs, and put pressure on its war economy. The economic and military impact is already visible, and it shows how infrastructure is becoming a key battlefield in modern wars. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.